Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of the Five Heart Podcast, brought to you by CornNation.com, part of the SB Nation Podcast Network. I'm your host, Greg Mahochko. Joining me, as always, our founder and fearless leader, John Dan Johnston, and not there, over here. We're all pointing because I have no idea where we are on John's screen, which is the main feed that you will be viewing for what? On my screen, I'm on the right, John's on the left, and Todd is where Todd belongs, below us, beneath us, if you will. But in reality, I'm probably on the bottom. That's what it is. Anyway, John's here, Todd's here, or vice versa. It doesn't really matter. Hi, guys. How the hell are you? So glad that I could be with you here tonight, an hour earlier or later than anticipated.
Good to see you, Greg.
You say that, but I don't know if you mean it, Todd.
Well, that's for you to determine. So
that's fine. Some things are best open to interpretation. So, how's everybody's week been?
Oh, my week has been frustrating. Selling a house is frustrating. I'm just going to leave it at that. So, yeah, just frustrating. But the weather's been nice and it's cool and it's fall. It's football weather, which I always wait for that time of year. So, no one should be going to football games in T-shirts and shorts. You should have to wear a jacket and long pants. That's what you should have to do for a football game. So,
I disagree. I feel like if you can get away with shorts and properly, themed apparel similar to this one, then you should be able to. And who are you, Todd? Who are you to tell anybody how to dress to a football game?
The god of football.
Oh, well, in that case, and I think Husker Nation is with me here when we say, fuck you. Because you have been screwing with us for 2 decades, man.
That's right. That's right. 2 decades I've screwed over Nebraska.
John, beautiful, youth-filled John.
Yes, Greg.
Do you believe this shit?
Oh, it's Todd. He's antagonistic because he's still looking for affirmation and validation.
Needs to be looking for a hair club for men.
There you go.
My week has been very interesting in learning the entire product line of Fortinet, a security firm. And I like working in cybersecurity. It's been really interesting, although exhausting.
I was going to ask, I didn't want you to feel left out. I was going to finish admonishing the god of football for being so mean to us over the last 20 years. And then I was going to get on to you, John. But yeah, I can imagine, look, in any career, in any field, and in any age, learning something new can be taxing. But at your advanced age and with your medical history, I believe that it's been I feel like, John, you've been coming home from work most days this week and going to a dark room and just kind of trying to meditate your way down.
I have been doing meditation a lot lately.
See? People don't think I read your book, but John, I know how to read.
You know what I did this week? I left something misconfigured on a product, and Iran found me. And one of my systems has now been being attacked by Iran relentlessly every hundreds of times every minute since then. So they find you very fast. If you have security holes, they find you extremely fast, and they just beat the shit out of you. And it's a lot of fun. We probably should move on to football now.
Well, let's do that. Can we turn back the hands of time just a few days? Last week, of course, we recorded on a Thursday night. I was in a hotel room. Of course, I'm back home now. Everybody who's watching on the YouTube can see. But we were talking up the possibility of going down to Norman, Oklahoma, and shocking the college football world. We all had predictions where Nebraska would end out on top, and Nebraska very well could have, if not should have, ended out on top. They ended up losing to number 3 Oklahoma 23-16, had a couple of Connor Culp missed field goals, had a not Connor Culp blocked PAT that was ran back for 2 points. Boys and girls, that's 8 points right there. Think about that.
Well,
we could have had
opportunities.
We could have had 22 points to their 21. I'm just saying. That's the math of it all.
Everybody wants to point to special teams as being a problem. Special teams was not the problem in this game.
I know what you're going to say.
What am I going to say?
Red zone offense.
Yeah.
You're not
That's
wrong.
really what it comes down to is we get down to the red zone and we run out of gas. We don't know how to score in the red zone. And by scoring, I don't mean kick field goals. I mean touchdowns. So here's what I propose. If we're going to go into Michigan State this week and we're going to win, is stop fucking kicking field goals. Just take it out of the game. Just look at yourself and say, gentlemen, we're not going for field goals. We're going to go for it on 4th down. I don't care if it's 4th and 18. We're not going to rely. How many football games do you watch in the NFL where them motherfuckers play to kick a field goal? And the Vikings lost last week because of that. I think it was the Vikings, right? The poor bastard missed the, let's play for the field goal. And then they miss. And then you go, well, it's the kicker's fault. No, it isn't. It's your jackass coach's fault because he didn't play for a touchdown. He didn't play to win. He didn't play to crush the other opponent into the ground and burst their eyeballs while you're stepping on their head. That was the problem with Nebraska. It wasn't because our special teams failed. It was because our offense failed.
But it's a two-headed. It's probably more than two-headed monster, because you're right. If the offense doesn't fail, then you don't have any reason to bring out special teams. But Connor Culp is the reigning and defending Big Ten kicker of the year, and this year he looks like. No, I'll be honest with you. He looks like me trying to be out there kicking field goals. And that's not pretty. That's not successful, and it's not working. So you're right, John. Getting the offense, getting in the end zone negates a lot of the kicking issues because you put 14 points up instead of 2 missed field goals. Then you don't have to. Then you're on the upside, and Oklahoma is now playing from behind. But we used to be called, and it doesn't seem like it was all that long ago, we used to be called Kicker U. But then you realize where we're at and the number of kickers we've had probably, let's say, in the last 5 years. What was it in Frost's second year that they brought the walk-on kid from the club soccer program? We have gone through kickers like my 5-year-old goes through underwear. And that's there's no stability there. We finally got to I'm going to mispronounce his name and I apologize. Pritchuk, the punter. Yeah, thank you. He finally found his footing a little bit in that game against Oklahoma. Had some really nice punts. But that's only one facet. And we can look at special teams all season long as, not just the kicking side, but the receiving side. And we've talked, ad nauseum about Cam Taylor-Britt and some of his mental errors, things like that. But at some point, I don't disagree with you. If you get the 6, you don't need to worry about the 3. But if you can't get the 6, because you are going up against a defense like Oklahoma, if you can't get the 6, you got to be able to get the 3. So it's not all or nothing. It's a blend of both that I really think doomed the Huskers last week. Todd, you've been quiet for an unusually long amount of time. What's your take?
Well, I guess on two levels, the red zone offense definitely needs to improve. But I feel bad for Connor Culp. He's got a mental block right now. Coach Frost mentioned that he was injured coming into fall practice, maybe didn't get the reps. And I know a little bit about it, probably just enough to be dangerous. But if he's got any kind of issues, in his hips or something like that, when you start talking about rotation and just the proper mechanics that it takes, for a kicker to execute. If you're slightly off, you're going to miss. And, but I do believe that right now, Connor Culp is probably not, when he's standing out there, he's probably not, in the right frame of mind, or at least the same frame of mind that he was last year. There's probably self-doubt, and that's problematic for him. So I know that I read today that Frost is going to stick with him. But I agree with what you gentlemen are saying, that we better start putting 6 on the board, and foregoing just the field goal because it's the traditional thing to do. I do want to throw one other thing in there. When we beat up on special teams, or people beat up on special teams, what I thought was probably the worst aspect of special teams last year has been fixed, and that's kickoff. And to me, that was the most glaring weakness that Nebraska had last year, and for the most part that's been resolved. We've got 2 young men that can kick the ball into or out of the end zone nearly every time they put the foot to the ball, and so that's been fixed. I think they'll fix punt return by removing Cam Taylor-Britt. And I think that's a case. I know a couple of weeks ago, John mentioned, he's out there trying to make a play. Yes, he is, but he's making bad decisions in trying to make a play. Put somebody out there that's sure-handed, field the punt, and don't turn the ball over. So,
I want to touch on that because that's important, because I think for a couple of years now we've been, good or bad, this team is only going to be, as we've been saying, almost, I guess since Scott Frost, or maybe a couple of weeks into the Scott Frost era or tenure, but the Huskers are only going to be as good as Adrian Martinez. So I see similarities, early, maybe similar approaches for Martinez, a quarterback, and Taylor-Britt in the return game, or realistically even at cornerback, because he's not, I think, as crisp this year, because he's trying to, I think, get that highlight moment, or, moments in a game. So they're both out there trying to make plays, trying to, on Cam's side on punt return, making a bad decision, but he's trying to extend the play. You can say the same about Martinez in some of the things he's done in the backfield, trying to extend a play or maybe shovel pass or something. That's what, burned him in the Illinois game back in week 0. So I don't fault the effort, certainly, but I do scratch my head at the decision-making. And a lot of that's got to come from coaching. And that's why, if we don't see Cam Taylor-Britt back in punt return, I'm fine with it. We are saddled, win or lose, Adrian Martinez until he's no longer a Huskers, our ride or die quarterback, because they're not bringing anybody in to supplant him. They're bringing in guys to be heirs to the throne, potentially, but they're not bringing in any serious competition for him, in my opinion only.
I agree with you on that, Greg.
So I don't question anybody's effort. I think everybody, the 11 guys who are on the field at any given time, I know that they all want perfectly executed offense or perfectly executed defense or perfectly executed special teams. The problem is that happens like 2% a game, and then sometimes they're just the beneficiaries of some fluke incident that, meant happy tidings, I was thrilled with the performance against Oklahoma. I was mad because I thought big noon kickoff, and I said, I'm in the central time zone. Obviously that means noon. And then a friend of the show, Josh, indicated to me something. He's like, I can't believe with all the penalties and we still came away with points. That's a good sign from that, penalty marker, all the false stars and everything else that in that field goal drive. I was like, are you talking about? I don't remember that in the Fordham game. What clip are you watching? And I said, oh shit. So I missed like the first 25, 30 minutes of the game, and then clicked over and was very pleased. I think we played perhaps our best game in the Scott Frost era against Oklahoma. And that if that doesn't motivate these young men who know that, hey, we were right there. A few things go our way and we, do the unthinkable, knock off the number 3 team in the country. If that doesn't motivate them and get them ready for Michigan State and moving forward, I don't know what will, because if they hadn't bought in before, if they don't buy in at that point, they need first bus out of Lincoln, because it ain't happening.
Well, I tell you what, with the Oklahoma game, you mentioned this. I think Adrian Martinez played, if not the best, certainly one of his better games since he's been at Nebraska. I think he played very well, and for the most part, I think he played within the game plan. There were times when he had to freelance, and he's athletic enough that he can get positive yardage when things fall apart. But overall, I thought Adrian played a very good game. That should put to rest any of the people out there that are, the bench Adrian groups and, put the backup in people. No, let's shut up and support Adrian Martinez. And he needs to be the guy that's running the show on offense.
Todd, are you familiar with how things work on the internet?
Yeah, I am. And I'm also the guy a year ago when I think the question was posed by you, Adrian Martinez or Dylan McCaffrey's brother. And I was the one, I think John and I both said Dylan McCaffrey's brother. But that's because of the performance of Adrian Martinez at the time. And, as it stands right now, I think he's playing well. I hope the rest of the team, shows the same want to that he does. But the bottom line is, this team going to be ready to play against Michigan State Saturday night? We all want to hope so. We all, and I want to say that they're gonna, but when you start out against Oklahoma with 4 penalties in the first drive on the offensive line, you can only get by with that so many times. And they're going to play in a very intense environment up in East Lansing. It's going to be a nighttime ball game that raises the intensity level a lot. And, quite honestly, and I'm hoping that I'm wrong. I mean, I hope that they do come out, and I hope that they are very focused, very businesslike, and they play disciplined football and put themselves in a position to win, because they should be able to beat Michigan State, in my opinion. And I think they will if they don't make the mental mistakes that have plagued them for so long.
Oh, obviously, we'll talk more about the Michigan State game as we get closer. But I want to go back to Norman because and Todd, you're right. I think Adrian Martinez played his ass off, and the receivers did a tremendous job. Yes, I mean, Omar Manning didn't just have his first touchdown reception as a Husker, but that was some Megatron style stuff. I mean, he stretched out. He was fully extended for that. It's the type of that one play was the type of play that we've been hoping to see from Omar Manning since he, first stepped onto campus, and going forward, obviously we hope we see more of that. I know he will too. Obviously it elevates his spotlight and of course helps the team win. I'm going to get it wrong as I always do, but Samari Torre.
Good.
Thank you. He has really developed into Adrian's favorite target, and that's fine because he's got sure hands and good speed, and he looks like he's a solid route runner. So he gets open, he finds holes in the defense. Austin Allen, is Austin Allen. Austin Allen is going to be a guy who plays on Sundays. I've been saying that. I've been picking apart, different Huskers every week, I feel like. But Austin Allen, similar to Torre, he's got good hands. He's not going to be a Rob Gronkowski type or probably even like a Travis Kelce type. But in my mind, he's like a Heath Miller. He's going to be dependable. He might be the check down route. He's going to be that 3rd and 7, 3rd and 9 guy who's going to get to the sticks, turn, and be right there. And at 6'9", he's going to have the body that quarterbacks are going to like throwing to. Again, my opinion. I was a little surprised in that we still don't have a solid number one from the running back spot. Before we get there, it was great to see Vokalek back out there playing as well. He had a big catch there in the fourth quarter that helped move the ball downfield in a good chunk play. So it's good to see him out there. We're 4 games in now, and I feel like the running back room, while everybody's getting good minutes, meaningful time on the field, we still don't have a designated one. And that does concern me because I feel like there's still no exact rhythm, from running back, quarterback, offensive line, because each of these runners runs a little bit different, and the offensive line can't get used to how quick one of these guys can hit the hole.
What the fuck, man? These guys can't get the snap down. The idea that they're going to get any rhythm from a running back.
Lofty expectations.
I guess not having a number one running back hasn't bothered me that much.
I want to see running backs accumulate 125 to 150 yards rushing a game. And if that's one guy that can handle the load, great. If that's a combination of 3, to me, that's fine as well. I just don't think that the offensive line is, working in concert. That's a stupid word to use, but I don't think that they're synced yet. And, when you watch I hate to even bring it up, but I've seen some end zone views of Iowa's football team this year in a couple of games, and they move as one. I mean, they are so coordinated.
Yeah, that's because they're all human centipeded up over there in Iowa.
Well, that's what it takes to run the football. That's what it takes.
Okay, no, their offense is fucking abysmal. Their offense has barely got a pulse.
What I'm telling you is, if you're going to run the football, your offensive line has to be coordinated, and all 5, or if you're going to throw the tight ends, 6 or 7, have to be working together. And the offensive line at Nebraska has not gotten to that level yet.
No, they haven't.
They have played well at times, and they've played well. They've played better as the game goes on. It's just consistency and experience. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, I think the jury's still out a bit on who the top running back is. I was convinced that Gabe Ervin was the top dog, going into the season, just the way that everybody was talking. But I think all 3 of us kind of have an affinity for Jaquez Yant, and we hardly see him. Well, he's losing weight. He's got to get his weight down to play, and apparently Marvin Scott he's no longer a factor, so.
It was good to see Ramir Johnson getting some, not just some good touches, but I think it was the punt that really stuck Nebraska down inside the 5, and then I think they lost another couple of yards. So we're looking at 3rd and 11, 3rd and 12 from our own 2, and he's swift of feet or whatever but
Yeah.
he's out with the first down. And I'm like, why don't we just do that every time? Just run that play, get 10, 12 yards every time. It would be fine. We don't have to worry about it anymore. Special teams.
Ramir Johnson, he's so quick with his first step, and his cuts, are really, really quick. And I think potentially, he's the guy that, can get into a rhythm, at least from what I've seen, can get into a rhythm, and he can be your 100-yard rusher. I haven't seen enough of Sevier Morrison to know if he can do that. Gabe Irvin, a lot of people like him, but I haven't seen Gabe Irvin, break many runs for 5 to 10 yards. I haven't seen much of that. So
what type of look? I like Irvin too, and Jaquez, but they're both true freshmen. So what type of benefit of the doubt do we give a true freshman running back running at the Power 5 level? Are there? And I'm not trying to be a smart ass, but are there true freshmen out, somewhere else who are just setting the world on fire?
Ohio State's got one.
Touche.
Okay, the problem Nebraska has with like Gabe Irvin is not that he can't run the ball; it's that his pass protection was. Those guys would stunt on the defense, where they twist or they send a guy around. And Todd mentioned our offensive line not working together. They're not picking up those twists. And if they're not picking up those twists, then you have to have a running back that's smart enough to pick up those twists. Otherwise, your quarterback's standing there and just getting killed. So the problem with Gabe Irvin was, he's gone for the season now, but the problem that he had was he wasn't recognizing pass protection worth a shit. So, he might be good running the ball, might gain some yards on the ground, but you can't have him in there if you're going to throw the ball, or, you put a guy in and they go, oh, well, you're running the ball now because that guy's in. You can't do that kind of stuff and have a well-functioning offense.
No,
that's the problem with freshman running backs they're not asked to do that stuff a lot in high school, I don't think, or at least not to the level that they are in college.
Well, and where's Step? What happened to him? Then again, Scott Frost has always been very tight-lipped about injuries. Always. So, it may be the case where they've got dinged up in practice and that's why he's not out there. I don't know.
And also it's Scott Frost's philosophy as well as mostly, like, what have you done for me lately? Which means who is working hard, who was showing out the most in practice. So, maybe Step, like you said, maybe he had a minor, turf toe or something like that. Or maybe he wasn't quite putting forth the effort. We don't know. We're not there. But yeah, that's another one that, it's like now in Irvin, of course, John, as you mentioned, losing him for the remainder of the season. So he'll come back next year and he'll have, that much more, conditioning. I think, he'll have some rehab, things like that. He'll be able to rest a little bit more and get more familiar with the playbook. He'll have a little bit more maturity coming back next year. But he's gone. As you said, Marvin Scott III is, on the milk carton somewhere, and Marquis Step. So we saw so many running backs in the Fordham game. Now here we are 2 weeks later, we're not seeing, half of those guys.
Right.
So that's not something that Nebraska can necessarily afford. We had an abundance of running backs, but we didn't have any standout running backs. Like we didn't have any, world beaters. So we had to do it by committee. So maybe I understand, Frost's philosophy or preference there. It is, and that's fine. Get if we have as a team 125, 150 rushing yards per game, that's great. Not any one guy's gonna, I think, like that because they all want, but you gotta do it on the field. Otherwise, you gotta make room for somebody else to do it on the field.
Well, something else too that factors into this a little bit, and I'm gonna preface this by saying I have no idea, but how many of those running backs were on the travel roster down to Oklahoma? Because I think we had 5 kickers / punters. And generally speaking, you take 2. You really don't want to take more than 2 unless you have to. But I know that Connor Culp was on the roster. The Meyer kid was on the roster. Was the kid from the transfer that is from Gretna, was he doing the kickoffs? I don't think Meyer was doing the kickoffs. So that would be 3 kickers. And then you had both the punters were down there. So 5 roster spots were taken up by kickers or punters. So I'm pretty sure that they didn't have 5 or, well, I don't know. I shouldn't say that. Did they have 5 or 6 running backs down in Oklahoma? I don't know. I would have more running backs than I would kickers.
That's the ideal situation, I think. But again, until we find that consistent kicker or kickers, then we're stuck with.
There is one more aspect to this, and that's this: you need to get these guys some touches so they don't transfer.
Yep,
because you got Gabe Irvin's talented freshman. He might be around, but if you don't at least get him some carries on the field, he's going to be gone. Ramir Johnson, he's going to be gone, and you still need to figure out which one of them is going to be a guy. So I can see balancing that out too. I mean, when you let's look at the wide receiver court right now. Nebraska kind of has an embarrassment of riches, really, when it comes down to it. By the way, I did a Michigan State podcast this week, and the guy goes, "So who's this guy, Samurai Tor?" And I thought, Samurai, that's something to go with. But I mean, if you look at,
they'll know his name by the end of Saturday night.
Hopefully they will. We have Torrey, we have Manning, we have Betts, we have tight ends. We have a lot of guys that at the receiving position can play. And, even Frost at UCF had a habit of getting 8 or 9 guys on the field and getting them receptions throughout the game. So that's kind of a good thing. So when you look at, we need to have one guy do this or one guy do that, I don't put as much, emphasis on that as other people do. I think when you talk to guys who actually play football, they will tell you that, for example, those interviews when I talked to Yoshi over the off season, I mean, he talked about getting used to a running back and the running back getting used to them and how they blocked and how they moved and stuff. And that makes a lot of sense, but we have a ways to go before we even have to worry about that.
I guess on the other side of the ball, I was really pleased for the most part with the defense. And I think that the linebackers may have played the best that I've seen the linebackers play as a unit in quite some time. And, good for them. That's a high-powered offense. And people can say all they want to about Spencer Rattler. I think he's an asshole, but that doesn't mean he's not an outstanding quarterback. But, the defense made it very difficult for that young man, on Saturday. And to hold them as low as we did, on points, their lowest output in a long, long time.
2016, I believe.
Okay.
65 games.
Yeah, that's outstanding. And, again, if the defense, can play consistently like they are, it gives the offense an opportunity, to put points on the board and win football games. And, hopefully the defense, can create some turnovers a little bit more than what they have. But if they keep playing the way they're playing, Nebraska is going to have a chance in most games to win.
Before we get too much to our Michigan State conversation, I want to alert the good listeners and viewers of the Five Heart podcast that Coronation's own Patrick Gerhardt sat down earlier this week with Spartan Nation's Hondo Carpenter. It's only a 10 or 12 minute episode. You can realistically, you can listen to it while you're taking a shit. But I highly encourage everybody to go and listen to that. Because I work behind the scenes, of course, for coordination as podcast editor. So I heard some of the some of the chatter that was recorded before, like 3, 2, 1. Hi, this is Patrick Gerhardt with the Coordination Radio. So I heard some of that, and I said, I don't know if I like Hondo. I ended up liking Hondo by the end of it, and he had some very nice things to say about Nebraska as well. So I encourage you to check that out. Look, this is not your grandpappy's Michigan State Spartans. These are Mel Tucker's Spartans, and he's got them playing a different style of football than what Nebraska's used to seeing from that team from East Lansing. And not only that, but we hate Mel Tucker because he was at Colorado not that long ago. And I heard a rumor that stated that he didn't want more than just, like the bare minimum amount of Husker fans in East Lansing in the stadium for the game, because he remembers how Big Red rolls. I don't know why I did that. That was unnatural. I apologize.
That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool, Greg.
But he remembers the way Husker fans travel and the outpouring of hatred that we left in Boulder a couple of years ago, and now he's in his second year at Michigan State, and I'll reference it again, but that interview with Hondo and that Patrick did, you heard that like D'Antonio quit the day before signing day. He retired or whatever it was. So they had a very small window of recruitment, and then they used the transfer portal a lot. So they've gone out and according to Hondo, they've got playmakers. Not as much quite on the defensive side, but they have some offensive weapons. So when we look at Sparty 2021, what is your guys' biggest concern about this Saturday's game?
Have you watched them?
I got time to watch the Husker game, and that's.
Have you watched them, Todd?
No, I've not watched them.
Okay, they beat the hell out of Miami. I mean, they beat the hell out of them. Okay, they beat them 38-17, but they beat them up. So I think the thing is, you always knew about Sparty was they were going to be physical. Under D'Antonio, they always had damn physical defenses, and then our offense was kind of plodding, and a 9-6 game was fine with Mark D'Antonio.
Boring, yeah.
Yeah, I think they still have that same physicality, or they have that same physical play, but they're not going to be this team that is content to sit around and score 9 points or 12 points. You know what I mean? They're not doing that anymore under Mel Tucker. I think that Miami, what do you take away from the Miami game? Miami's a lot like Florida State. They're both programs that are just in the hotbed of all the recruiting in the nation. And both of them have severe culture issues. When you look at Scott Frost talks about culture and everybody mentions culture, you look at Florida State and Miami, what you see is teams that have really good athletes that they suck. Florida State's offensive line hasn't been able to block for like 6 or 7 years now. And when we look at our offensive line, we'll go, well, that's not any different than ours. Yes, it is. We have not got our quarterbacks killed. And Florida State has routinely gotten quarterbacks injured because their offensive line is so terrible. And when you move over to Miami, you have this problem where it's like they think they're going to walk on the field and just magic's going to happen. And they get beat up because they're not prepared for the other team to go, we don't give a shit if you're fucking Miami. We're going to kick your ass. And that's exactly what Sparty did to him.
I think that, John, I didn't mean to cut you off here, but I just want to echo what you're saying. It's, to me, what it's going to come down to is, will Nebraska line up and punch Sparty in the mouth? Are they going to punch him back when Sparty punches them? I don't want to use the analogy of the rock fight because I think it's going to be there's going to be more finesse than that, but it's going to be a very physical game. And in my opinion, if Nebraska comes out and plays the type of ball game that they did against Oklahoma with that level of intensity, I think that they will hold their own. And I think that they're going to come out, with more points at the end than Michigan State is. But if they start off slow and they get behind, and if they're making a bunch of mistakes, I think it could end up being a long night, because it's the atmosphere up there is going to play into, the outcome of the game. And Nebraska needs to be able to take the Spartan fans out of the game if at all possible.
I think the best thing that happened in Oklahoma was we started out that game with two false start penalties, 30 yards of penalties on the first offensive drive. We still went down, scored points. This team I talked about has a problem with overcoming bad things happening. And what they did against Oklahoma is bad things happened repeatedly, and they always overcame them and fought all the way to the end of that game and stayed in it and had a chance to win it. What they're going to have to do against Michigan State is they got this kid, Kenneth Walker, the third, 164.3 yard rushing average per game, leads the nation. So we're going to see a healthy dose of him. I think our defense is up to that task, but 8.6 yards per carry. That's a lot of yards, man. So if what's going to happen is that we're going to see, we talked about Oklahoma being a test for our defense, and they kind of passed it. Well, they did pass it, but Michigan State's just going to be another team that's going to have another test. They're going to have an NFL level running back that's going to run the ball right at them, and we're going to have to stop that and slow it down.
And that's where that discipline on defense and gap control and doing what you're supposed to do, making sure that you're doing your assignment rather than trying, to get on Sports Center. That's what's going to be really important. Nebraska, and we've seen it, guys. We've seen them hold Iowa. We've seen them hold Wisconsin over the years. We've seen them hold those teams down for a while. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, comes that, explosive run, and there's no one there. And that gives me a little bit of concern with Michigan State because of the talent of that running back. They cannot allow, that guy to get those big gains.
The good news is their pass defense is 108th in the nation. So I don't know. What if you were a Sparty, what would you do? I'd go and run the ball and run the ball and run the ball and run the clock and try to keep that Nebraska offense that can attack my weakness off the field. But you have to wonder what Michigan State's going to, what are they going to do? Are they going to load up against the run and say, throw the ball? Or are you going to play that bend, don't break stuff where you're trying not to give up the play? I would think that they would hang back and give up the underneath stuff. In other words, crosses across the middle in the short to shallow range. Put it this way. I don't think we're going to see like Samari Toure running open down the field by himself. I think we're going to see Samari Toure running underneath like safeties and cornerbacks, and he's going to have to make plays and out, juke people and make some yards. So I think I'm trying to figure out how to ask this question, because I know the question I want to ask. I just don't know if we talked about it in years past, but did Oklahoma give the game plan for beating the Huskers, and that's keep a spy on Martinez? They did that from about the second half of the third quarter on, and it worked because they kind of helped contain him. He didn't get out running free. I'm not saying that they're the first person who ever spied a QB before, but when you take away that element of the Huskers offensive game, Martinez, what he's able to manufacture, and extend plays. If you take that away, I really do feel like you lose a third of the, I don't want to be like, toss out our game plan. But you do remove quite a bit of what Nebraska is able to do kind of on the fly.
Well, when you use a linebacker as a spy, then there's going to be an open receiver somewhere.
Yeah.
And that's why, John had mentioned, the crossing patterns and that kind of stuff. I would venture to say that Michigan State's going to play, they're going to play a zone. They're going to play a soft zone, try to keep everything in front of them. And if, listen to Joel Klatt last week, that's what Nebraska did to Oklahoma. And to remedy that, you have to be able to run the football. And, if that's the kind of coverage, if that's the kind of game plans that Michigan State's going to have, come in and play, then that's going to put a premium on Nebraska being able to run the ball. I don't think, as far as using a spy, it can be very effective, but that's where our offense is going to have guys who have the ability to run or backs catching passes, because somebody has to be open if you're going to dedicate one guy whose only responsibility is the quarterback.
The other thing about that is Oklahoma had the athletes to do that. If you're going to put a spy on a quarterback, you have to have a linebacker that can stay with him, or somebody who can actually stay with him, because that's a hell of a lot harder than it sounds, especially when it's Adrian Martinez, or I think Spencer Rattler was a good scrambler, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was pretty good.
Yeah. But you have to have the guy, and then you're giving up something else. So I don't see Michigan State doing that. I think the other thing is we did play a soft zone, but we moved in and out of it. You know what I mean? We didn't do that all the time. And that's what really screwed Oklahoma up. Is I thought Eric Shenander called his best game he's had, because he moved things around enough that Oklahoma really couldn't figure out what he was going to do from one play to the next on defense. So it'll be interesting to see what we do against Michigan State. It'd be a nice game to win. Of course, they're all nice to win. I want us to win. Could we win, please? We didn't feel bad about ourselves this week, and I don't want to feel bad about myself.
Well, let's get to it then. Nebraska is in East Lansing at Michigan State to take on Sparty and the House of Spartans. So really, I mean, if we just show up with a couple million Persians, based on what I remember from that movie, we'll probably win. 300?
Couple of million Persians?
Allegedly in the Battle of Thermopylae. It was 300 Spartans versus, a very sizable Persian force led by Emperor Xerxes.
2 million Persians. 2 million.
That's a couple.
Well, what do you think is going to happen, Todd? Do you want me to go first?
I'd like to hear your explanation that you give every week, because I'm not quite as thorough in how I determine my prediction. So I'd like to hear yours first, and that might cause me to adjust mine a little bit.
Okay. Normally what I usually say is Nebraska is going to score 40 points, but we're not capable of scoring 40 points to this offense yet. However, we are capable of holding the other team to minimal points. So here's how this is going to go. Our offense is going to score 24 points of their own, 24-27. And we're going to get one Sparty turnover, and that's going to add 3 or 7 points. So I'm going to go with, let's say, like 32 for Nebraska. And I'm going to say Sparty is going to get, let's say, 24 points of their own. And we've so far, Adrian Martinez he's had that one horrible fumble against, Illinois that was really kind of broke their back. And otherwise he's played extremely well. He's had one interception that was kind of a worthless interception against Oklahoma, with that one great play the guy made and cost his team like 18 yards of field position.
That was a thrown punt.
It kind of was.
It was especially beneficial to the Huskers.
Yes.
Somebody's going to catch this, and hopefully it's my guy, but oh no, if it's not, But I do think that we can get at least one turnover from them. And there's 32 to 24.
I'm trying to do the math in my head of how you get to 32. 28.
24 points of, it's just 31, 32, somewhere in there, 31 to 24. We get 32 because the Big Ten refs feel sorry for us for continually taking points off the board with shitty fucking calls. And then they go, I think we'll just go ahead and give Nebraska a touchdown in this game to make up for the crap we've done earlier in the season.
You know that'll never happen, John.
I know it'll
Don't get
never happen.
our listeners' hopes up.
You know, I will say this. Officiating has been god-awful everywhere. I watched the Penn State-Auburn game, and at one point they lost track of downs on the field, and Penn State punted on third down. On another play, they had a fourth down play, and the Penn State guy kept pushing forward and pushing forward and pushing forward. The whistle never blew the play dead for forward progress, but they still marked him back. And Penn State turned the ball over on downs. And you're like, what the fuck are you guys even doing?
I'm glad you mentioned that. Real quick, I got to cycle back to the Oklahoma game. But there was a point in there where there was I think they ended up giving Nebraska 1 yard gain for a loss of forward momentum. But I think it might have been Morrison or Irvin or I don't think it was Johnson. But they moved the pile, and it should have been a 5 or 6 yard gain. And they blew the whistle and marched it back. I'm like, why don't you actually wait to see the stop of forward momentum? So I was going to ask if you knew what conference provided the refs for that shit show in Norman.
It's Big Ten.
Of course it was. We get hosed by our own against the non-conference opponent.
Yeah.
So, John, we'll never get the benefit of the doubt from the Big Ten officials.
No, we won't. We're going to have to overcome that and overcome special teams. And the good news is this. Here's the really good news. Number one, I don't think it's any secret that when I say this, I'd be interested to hear anybody who disagrees with me, but I think it's pretty clear that Scott Frost was not prepared for this job when he was hired. He was not capable of doing this job. And what we're seeing now is he might be growing into it. And he's figuring, the defense has figured their shit out. The offense is starting to figure its shit out. The special teams is starting to slowly piece pieces together. So I think the biggest question Nebraska still has at this point right now is Scott Frost going to continue to grow as a coach and grow into the job to be the guy that we need him to be?
And do we have the patience to let that happen?
Because I think if right now we have offensive pieces in place that if we can overcome the special teams and we can overcome the penalties and we can overcome the stupid mistakes, when we stop making those, we are going to kick the fucking shit out of a lot of people.
Todd, let's hear your...
It's a matter of, are we going to stop making those? Because the moment we do, there you go. How many one-score games have we lost? Like 18 under him? And everybody goes, they're the same mistakes. Okay, yeah, but when you flip that around and when you correct them, because they are correctable, then you win all those one-score games and we're fuck you, Big Ten West. That's what I say. That's the good news.
Well, I am changing my prediction a little bit, not because of John's explanation, but because of what you guys brought up earlier. I was going to go with Nebraska 34, Michigan State 21. But they're not going to kick 2 field goals. So I'm going to adjust and I'm going to say, see, I did my math. So I'm going to adjust and I'm going to say Nebraska 35 and Michigan State 21. So that's my prediction. Now, that is 1 point different than what I predicted for Oklahoma. I wasn't on the show, but I predicted Nebraska would beat Oklahoma 34-21. And I predicted they'd beat Furman 34-21. And I predicted they would beat Buffalo 34-21. And I even stuck my neck out and predicted they would beat Illinois 34-21. I'm really confident that adding that point 35-21 against
I like this. This works for
against
me.
Michigan State is good. That's where it's going to be. Making that slight adjustment in my prediction.
Yes, Craig.
Yes. What the hell's Furman?
Fordham.
Furman, Fordham, whatever. It's fucking East Coast.
An F school. An effing school.
I mean, it could have been Fresno State if it's an effing school.
I think we've played Furman in baseball once.
Probably.
Yeah. Is that named after that cop from L.A., Paul Furman?
No.
Oh, okay.
It's a hell of an odd
Okay,
pull
it's
there,
going
Todd.
down the toilet.
All right, here we go. Y'all ready for
Yes.
All ready for this one?
GM pick right here? Pick of the week.
Continue on.
I like where Todd's starting. Oh God, no, shit! He's gonna streak across the screen. Oh,
No, I'm just getting hot.
yeah, you are big guy.
All this football talk.
Ooh. Didn't know
I got
football
left.
talk revved your engines, huh? So I like where Todd's going because we're not going to get 2 field goals out of it. Any kicker on this team. One can't make a field goal, and the other one can't even get a kickoff past his offensive line. So I like 35. I, however, do think that Sparty may have a kicker on their team. They probably have 1 kicker and not 7. So I'm going to say Sparty 27. I think Nebraska wins. I think this is, I saw somewhere earlier today that this could be the biggest game of the Scott Frost era.
Steve Sipple.
Yeah, they say that about every game because I guarantee you that if they would have lost to Fordham, that would have been the biggest game of the Scott Frost era. If they would have beaten Oklahoma,
It would have been.
It would have been if they would have beat Oklahoma. That's the biggest game of the Scott Frost. I don't think Sip talks like that. I've never listened to him, but for some reason, to me, Scott Sipple, Steve Sipple talks like this, like a.
The MSU guy in the podcast asked me, if you lose to Michigan State, what is how bad is that going to be? Is it just going to be a blip, or is it going to be a big problem? My answer is every single game of the Scott Frost era is a referendum on the program.
Yeah.
And it is.
Yep.
Sadly.
Until he starts winning these games and winning them in a streak and winning consistently, every game is going to be the biggest. So, it's kind of,
You're not
that
wrong.
and hyperbole sells, Greg. Hyperbole actually, sells many things. I don't know if you've noticed the media in our current time and frame, but if you're not a screaming, raving fucking maniac, nobody's paying attention to you.
That's why my other podcast has next to 0 listenership, because they don't have the backing of acornation.com and the built-in audience. They just got to be for like nerds and people who like comics and Marvel movies and shit like that. So we get like 20, 30 people because we just keep it even. We're not out there making any bold, outlandish claims. Like, it's just not our style. It's not my style. Does this look like the face of anybody making any bold, outlandish claims?
Maybe about
Does this
it.
look like the face of anybody?
Yeah.
Okay.
This looks like the face of like adult onset diabetes or something. But all right, that's probably a joke too far. I apologize, Lord. All right, that'll do it for another clean sweep of predictions. Everybody on the panel thinks that it's going to be a Nebraska dub, and it should be. We need to start going into other stadiums and kicking the doors in and taking our shit. So let's start this Saturday night in East Lansing, and the best part about it is that I'll start watching it at 9:00 and fast forward through all the commercials. So be watching for that on Twitter, on the official Twitter account of the 5 Heart Podcast at the number 5 Heart Podcast, where I'll be tweeting all of my thoughts in a very echoey chamber type place because I'll have all my other notifications turned off so nobody spoils the outcome of the game for me. So I'll be with my family for a change. So that'll do it for the 5 Heart Podcast. Thanks to John. Thanks to Todd, as always, for being here and just making us laugh and sharing some good times, some good thoughts, and most importantly, our love of the Big Red. That is it for reminding you this week and every week. I'm Greg Mahochko, telling you that 5 Heart is all the heart you need. John?
Go Big Red.
Go Big Red.
He did it. Success. I never thought I'd see the day.